Miriam and her protector needed access to the police database once again, so they returned to the local police department and typed in the given details. Voila! 3 trucks and their rig owners' names and registration details appeared. Just like that, the duo had new clues and a fresh start. They then set out to determine which of the 3 truck owners provided transportation and to what location for these distressed boys who hastily dashed out of Emily's reach. The first trucker, Dean, was determined to not be in the vicinity of the Pilot petrol station on the day of the boys' great escape. David, the second driver, however, was believed to have been in the vicinity of the petrol station that fateful day. When they found him, Miriam's protector quickly determined that he knew nothing, or at least it seemed that way. According to what they found, he was on his long day off from the road following 10 straight days of travel. If his truck was there, it was only to fill the tank. Either the boys came up with another perfect ruse or it was true. With Chase, it was not an uncomplicated process to determine whether something was counterfeit or authentic, given its ability to implant and alter thoughts and perceptions. The seasons and weather had changed many times. On this particular day, it was warm in Connecticut, and Miriam and her detective met the truck driver on his front porch. David had a beer in hand and was having a conversation with his teenage son who wanted to borrow the car. "You're a fool if you think I'm loaning my car to you after the stunt you pulled at school this week. How am I supposed to trust you?" David Jr. replied. "Dad, did you make mistakes as a kid?" You're a kid when you find it appropriate, and a teenager and a man when it's convenient." "No, I didn't make mistakes." "Well, the truth is that I did make mistakes. The truth is also that I never got in trouble. I never was caught. You can't do the things I did when I was a little knucklehead. There are cameras everywhere. One bad decision today changes life's trajectory forever. Lucky for you, I went to school with your principal and was able to explain that, and well, I reminded him that he did the very same thing as a young teen. I was able to explain to him that he turned out okay. So, Principal Dwyer TP the teacher's office and shrink wrap the teacher's desk. My point is this. Why am I still talking to you, Biff? There is homework you need to do, and you need to be doing it. Prove you are as good of a son and student as I sold to Principal Dwyer. The keys, put them where I left them. You're still on punishment for 2 more weeks. Bye-bye. And don't force me to install cameras like the school in this house to check if you're doing what you've been told, okay? As he took a deep sip of the beer and lowered his hand, David realized that he had an audience. 2 strangers had been watching him. After spending so much of his days and weeks and months on the road, he had trained himself to have tunnel vision on important things to minimize his distractions. There was no dialing and driving. There was no brushing his teeth and driving. There was no making recycled lemonade unless it was an emergency and he had an appropriately sized cup. How long have you 2 been there? Never mind. How can I help you 2 officers? The brawny detective, Miriam's protector, walked up to David and handed him a screen capture of 2 boys from 6 years earlier. He watched his body language and awaited his response to see what this guy knew and to determine if he was being truthful. "My partner and I are investigating the disappearance of these 2 boys. And why are you here to see me? I barely want the one I've got. Did you hear what he did? Why do you think I know something about them? And you said this photo was taken how long ago?" "As I was saying, sir, on the day these 2 boys disappeared, they were spotted at a Pilot petrol station. This photo was taken there on that night. While it's difficult to see a significant amount of detail in this smaller photo, I want to direct your attention to that part in the upper right-hand corner." Miriam pointed to the partial rear view of a truck and its license plate. "What am I looking for?" Oh, I see something. It sort of looks like my truck's tag. Hey, I don't know anything about 2 missing boys. My truck is in the rear. You're welcome to check it." Without saying a word or missing a beat, the brawny detective walked toward the side of David's house where the rig was parked. As he passed Miriam, he indicated that the guy seemed to be telling the truth. To ensure nothing was missed, the detective still entered David's rig and gave it a thorough look through. There was nothing there or any physical sign that the boys were ever inside of his truck. "Just as you said, my partner did not find anything. This confirms your assertion that you did not see the boys or take them from the petrol station." Miriam breathed in deeply, then out slowly. She was becoming annoyed. Dean, the first truck driver, yielded no lead because there was no string to pull or scent or essence to tap into. He was simply not there on that date. This guy, David, was forthright and honest, but the end result appeared to yield the same result. Not a damn thing. Miriam was determined to try everything in her power to locate those boys. She had to. I have a specialty in reconstructing events based on recollections. The process is steeped in a combination of inductive and deductive logic and sounds. Some say the actual process resembles something partially supernatural. However, I assure you it's a new law enforcement technique that's getting a great deal of buzz. With that said, I'd like for you to tell me everything you did while there. I realize it was years ago. Don't leave out anything, even if you think it's mundane. David found this request quite unusual and a bit uncomfortable. The only reason he eventually complied was because he had just fought so hard to take care of his son. He was trying to protect David Jr. and his future from his self-imposed danger and foolishness. David could only imagine and wonder how those twin boys' family must be feeling. He assumed they felt helpless and were in severe mental agony, so he decided in that moment, while the request was strange, he would offer his cooperation. The memories came back in the form of moments. They were things and rituals he either always performed when he finally got off the road or reawakened memories. David always used the bathroom first. He then checked his phone for any missed calls or text messages. He then always had a black coffee. After that, he went to take a shower, he played video games in the petrol station, and then he would eat. As David recalled his action, Miriam was especially intrigued by his dining recollection. As he recalled choosing his hot dog, nachos, and his favorite pop, Miriam looked around at the other drivers in the store. One truck driver stood out. While he was no small guy, he curiously was holding 2 hot dogs, 2 bags of crisps, and 2 cans of pop. Okay, this is great. Take me back to the moment after you got your food. Tell me whatever it was that you had for dinner. Did you walk back outside for any reason? I did. I left my charger in the truck and I wanted to charge my phone. My plan was to get the charger, return to the inside of the petrol station, plug it in, watch TV in the sitting room area along with the other drivers. I can literally picture exactly what you did. Look around as you go to your truck. Do you see anyone, perhaps a man carrying 2 hot dogs, 2 pops, 2 bags of crisps? No, I went directly to my truck. I did drop my receipt and I fumbled to open the driver door. I placed everything in my hand onto the ground. The receipt moved a bit in the wind. Wait, I do see a Gordo man, and thought to myself, this guy does realize he can stop at another petrol station later, doesn't he? He has no restraint. Stay in that moment. Sometimes I can imagine things through your memory. Wait, I've got it. This is very helpful. Miriam looked over at the other detective and motioned that they should leave. She thanked David for his time. Miriam went back using his memory and saw the third truck driver with 2 hot dogs, 2 drinks, and 2 bags of crisps. As he drove away, she saw 47SV6TZ. It was the gray truck. They, Miriam and her protector, had found the next conveyance. Now the detectives needed to find the driver and owner of the vehicle. Miriam and her protector went back to the police station again. Using the police department database, they found their man. The truck driver was found in the most unlikely of places. He was in prison serving 4 life sentences for 4 counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of molestation. Seeing him would be tough, but not impossible for the pair. They had to approach the visitation carefully. Miriam and her protector were skilled enough for that, though. Getting the guy to remember or speak after Chase influenced him, well, Miriam had her doubts.